Botswana congratulated Zimbabwe on the holding of successful harmonized elections in August 2023. Zimbabwe wished Botswana well in the upcoming elections in October 2024. The heads of state at regional level congratulated all the SADC countries that held peaceful and successful elections in 2022 and 2023, namely Angola, Lesotho, Zimbabwe, Eswatini, Madagascar, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC. They also wished the republics of Botswana, Mauritius, Mozambique, Namibia, and South Africa successful and peaceful elections due to be held during the year 2024. The heads of state at the multilateral level welcomed the convergence of views on regional, continental, and international issues, and further agreed to continue to harmonize their positions. In that regard, they reiterated their call for the need to reform the United Nations system, particularly the United Nations Security Council. They also reaffirmed their commitment to the common African position as enunciated in the Izolweni Consensus and the Sirte Declaration. The heads of state considered the ongoing situation in the Middle East, including the Israeli-Palestine conflict and the security situation in Ukraine and the Red Sea. They acknowledged the significance of upholding peace, security, and stability, along with advocating for the peaceful resolution of all disputes based on international law and the United Nations two-state solution to the Palestinian question. At the conclusion of the BNC, His Excellency Dr. DAMBUDZO MNANGAGWA expressed gratitude to His Excellency Dr. MOKGWEETSI MASISI and the government and people of the Republic of Botswana for the warm welcome and generous hospitality accorded to him and his delegation. His Excellency Dr. EMMERSON DAMBUDZO MNANGAGWA extended an invitation to his counterpart, His Excellency Dr. MOKGWEETSI MASISI, to attend the 5th session of the BNC to be held in Zimbabwe in 2025 on a date and venue to be agreed through diplomatic channels. Maun, Botswana, 9th February 2024. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maribe. Ladies and gentlemen, you will have copies of the communique as soon as we are done with the press conference. Now, I would like now to throw the microphones to yourselves, not necessarily hitting you with the microphones, because this is your time, ladies and gentlemen, for you now to pose the questions to your excellencies. And please state your name, the organization that you represent, and ask your question as succinctly and as clearly as you can. We will not take too much time. However, if their excellencies wish to make opening remarks, we shall allow them to make those opening remarks, and then you can then pursue the questions later. Thank you, Your Excellencies. Now, as I said, the communique will be made available to yourselves after the press conference. So please, we have the roving mics close by, and they will give you the microphone, and then we will then ask you to ask your question. Ramadubu, please give you the microphone, sir.
Good afternoon, Your Excellencies. My name is Dikaraba Ramadubu. I work for Botswana Guardian. My questions goes to both of you, Your Excellency. What I want to find out is, had there been any progress made with the boundary demarcation between the two republics around the Kazwila area? When exactly will the exercise be completed, and what could be causing delay if there is any delay? And I would also like to Your Excellencies to respond to kindly explain the timelines for the border crossing using IDs for the respective countries. The initiative seems to be in line with the AFCT and SADC protocols. But what I want to find out is what assurance are you giving to your respective nationals that all will be put in place before the implementation? I thank you, Your Excellencies.
Thank you, Rara Madubu. There's a hand there at the back, Mohabi.
Good afternoon, Excellencies. My name is Raida Habatusi. I represent Miri newspaper. A colleague of mine sent me a question that I want to pose to Excellencies. The question goes like this. From a Botswana perspective, it has been viewed as a waste of public funds to continually deport illegal immigrants when next day or even same day they are back in the country. Can therefore there be a better way of handling this? Maybe document them, utilize their services in areas like farming, particularly that Botswana is pushing for food sufficiency. Thank you.
Thank you, Raida. Our last question, and then we will ask their Excellencies to respond to those questions.
I'm the editor of the Sunday Standard newspaper. My question has very little to do with the communique. In fact, it will just help me give context to the communique. And it was inspired.
Please hold your mic closer to you.
It was inspired by the fact that you refer to each other as brother. So, so when it comes to relationship, we are fascinated by the mundane and the extraordinary when it comes to relationship between presidents. So can you please lead us?
Please.
So can you please take us behind the personal relationship between the title "My Brother"? How did you reach a stage where you refer to each other as "My Brother"?
Thank you very much, Ramokoni. Your Excellencies.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, my brother. I'll begin with the question asked by Ms. Ramadubu, the first one, on the border affirmation. How far we are, whether there's been delay, what is the cause of delay. I'm happy to report to you that it's been resolved. It's been resolved. We've agreed the point. It just left for implementation. We settled it today, not long ago. And the reason for the delay was due to differences of interpretation of where the point of convergence was, given different perceptions of the point at which there was a confluence between the Chobe River and the Zambezi. But it's done, dusted, behind us. The next question was to do with when we expect to use IDs of our national countries to cross borders. The simple answer is that there's ongoing very positive consultation between the government of Botswana and the government of Zimbabwe. There have been exchanges of what is required in order to enable that. You'd go through security vetting of the instruments, comparability of the instruments used, etc. Just like we did with Namibia. So it's going through that, and we, as the leaders, have expressed a desire to do this not because we want it ourselves only, but it's a long-standing resolution, an intention as pronounced not just by SADC, but by the AU. So we don't claim to own it or be the originators of this. We are the deliverers of it. And so when those consultations are complete and there's testing of the integrity of the use of such, we will let you know and invite you to the ceremony where we will celebrate it. Mr. Ryder Habatusi was sent to ask a question. It wasn't his. He said he was sent by someone to ask how prudent is it to continue to repatriate illegal immigrants by the droves who come in, repatriated, the following day they're back. Should you not use them for agricultural labor? Look, sovereign states have their laws in place that govern immigration. We also are signatories to protocols that respect the rights and freedoms and integrity of persons. And any right-thinking person and state institution that respects the rule of law and respects the dignity of persons would never fathom taking illegal immigrants and using them as cheap labor. So no, we have no appetite to so do. We have every appetite to apply Botswana laws strictly to the latter. Of course, if there's no abatement to illegal immigration, we resort to employing other means by which we can ease the burden, because that very crossing illegally is an expression of a burden, and one, I might hazard to say, of the solutions we think will help ameliorate that is the use of national IDs. One, they are cheaper than passports and therefore more easily accessible. Two, national IDs do not have page numbers that get filled up. Three, at least for the case of Botswana, every citizen is obliged to have a national ID from 16 years. And it being obligatory means that there is a lot of our citizens who have them by law. It's not the same for a national passport. And when they use such instruments, facilities that they have with them, it makes it very difficult for them to justify crossing illegally. And so we open up opportunity for there to be a legitimization of crossing. But it does not mean that there are no filters when you use IDs. So yes, go back and tell your friend, suppose he is your friend, if you agreed to carry his question or her question, that we will treat every immigrant, legal or illegal, humanely and apply our law. Remukoni, this intricate question. What's behind the brotherhood? And how did it start behind? First of all, this is not a facade. It's not a facade. He's my real brother. Right? Now, this brotherhood is born out of our disposition in the positions we hold as leaders, which expresses how we want to be perceived and how we want our citizenry to perceive one another. So you, Mr. Mokoni, and your Zimbabwean counterparts are brothers, I so declare. And sisters. Because truth be told, that's what we are. I can flip it. What's behind the non-brotherliness? What was the mischief? I think you ought to be asking, why have we not been calling each other brother all along? Right from Seretse Khama and Robert Mugabe, may their souls rest in peace. They were brothers. And when you're a leader, you ought to inspire, demonstrate, be a point of reference for your citizens. And I, MOKGWEETSI MASISI, am a true and legitimate legal brother to EMMERSON DAMBUDZO MNANGAGWA. Full stop.
Your Excellency, President Mnangagwa.
I'm not so sure which area you feel he has left out.
The questions were set to be for both of you, Your Excellency.
Okay, the first question was about free movement.
Correct.
The history of our respective countries, we didn't have passports to move from one country to another. Passports were brought in when those who thought were more civilized than us came to our region. We have decided that Zimbabwe, Botswana, South Africa, Mozambique, we in our region, we have a policy of integration. I don't know what word to use in Botswana to say integration. In Shona, integration, kubatana. And kubatana means like this. So that answers that question. There's, I don't know the second question, but the third question was, what is the essence of your brotherhood as two presidents? What you should have asked is, what was the essence in the past when presidents didn't call each other brothers? Now that we call each other brother, 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 that is an English word. I don't know in Tswana. In Shona, muningina wangu, indri mkoma. In English, I'm saying he is my younger brother and I'm the elder brother. So the younger brother and the older brother, if they are walking, you say, those two are brothers. So when you see us walking, you say, those are brothers. The difference is I'm elder and there is younger. But because he is president of a republic, I advise him as a young brother quietly. In the public, he stands as president and I also as president. But once we go in the private room, he regards me as elder brother. That is African custom. So this brotherhood is rooted in African culture. In our African culture, your brother is not the only one who is born with the same mother and yourself. But every other boy, girl, they should call each other brother in our customs. So He is my brother. I am his brother. You are my brother. If you refuse, it's your own fault. The ladies here are my sisters, and I'm their brother. That's how it should be. It is true that even in a family, when you are born, say, 3 boys, 3 girls in one family, by one mother, possibly one father. You may not all agree, but you don't cease to be brother and sister. Different characters or attributes. You still remain brothers and sisters born by one woman. Now, under the context of what we are discussing now, SADC was created to integrate our SADC countries. If we are integrated, how do we become brothers and sisters? Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. I shall take the next round of questions, and please let us limit to 1 question per person, so that we don't prolong our stay here. Madam, please, the microphone is behind you.
Good afternoon, Your Excellencies. My name is Emma Mutapati. I stand here wearing 2 hats. One is the editor of the Voice newspaper, and the other one is the chairperson of the Botswana National Editors Forum. So, sir, can I just ask 2 questions?
Okay.
On behalf of
But please be very, very precise.
The first question goes, what has Zimbabwe done right in the agricultural sector to achieve a surplus, especially in maize, in the year 2023-2024, whereas we are in deficit? What is it that Zimbabwe has done right that perhaps you can share with us and we can emulate? And then the second question is, since there's a brotherhood here and there's advice that goes on behind closed doors, don't you think that it is time to rethink some of the laws that govern press freedom and freedom of expression, especially when it comes to the laws of insults, given that this is highly, to describe an insult and to identify what an insult is highly perceptual and subjective. And right now, as we stand here, there are 40 journalists that have been charged with this law of insult in Zimbabwe. And as we talk about advice, don't you sometimes, when you are talking as elder brother to younger brother, and maybe talk about time for Botswana to have its own Freedom of Information Act, which Zimbabwe has had for quite some time? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Afternoon, Your Excellencies. Latile Mute here from DMFM. My elder brother here wants to hear your side on the border issue, Your Excellency MNANGAGWA. So he wants to hear your side on the dispute or the difference there. And the question of, from a lot of Botswana who are against the use of IDs to cross between Botswana and Zimbabwe, their worry is the influx of Zimbabweans in the country. So what would you say to them, Your Excellency MASISI? And then
we said 1 question, my brother, so that you can allow others to ask. I think it's always better to ask a fresh question so that we don't dwell on 1 question. Otherwise, you are losing your time.
Good afternoon, Your Excellencies. My name is Jinu Lisitse. I'm from Yarona FM. And my question, of course, I should also recognize the bromance. My question is about the collaboration in the space economy. If you could please elaborate where these collaborations would come from, that would be helpful. I thank you.
Thank you so very much. I haven't heard any from our colleagues from Zimbabwe. You are not from Zimbabwe, are you? What are our colleagues from Zimbabwe? If you, okay, you are from Zimbabwe. Okay, well, you can give him, he will be an honorary Zimbabwean for now. Go ahead and just ask your question.
My name is Boniface.
The microphone is not on, I think.
My name is Boniface Kiagabeze. I come from the Bangwa Express. We are based here in Mau. My question actually is directed to Your Excellency MASISI, and it's relating to the protracted negotiations that we had as Botswana in DBS last year that we know you were the leader of. In the past, I think look into the African history, we always know that whenever the leaders were bold about what they want to do for their countries, the impact of that was often disastrous on the economy. But
disastrous
on the economy, especially where you are challenging the multinational companies, probably like DBS. But we saw you, the previous years, you were very strong on that. In a negotiation, a very good negotiation was actually reached at the end of the day. I want to hear from you that during those negotiations, very stern as they were, did you feel anyhow that you were involved in probably a David Goliath affair?
In what?
David Goliath affair. Please lift up your voice a bit. And while we are at it, I would advise that please don't put your hand in your pocket, my brother.
Oh, okay.
Talking to His Excellency. Thank you.
Sorry. And what were you feeling, His Excellency, during that time, especially those momentous negotiations? And in your view, how is that success from that DBS negotiations, how can it probably be replicated in Africa, looking at the success of the deal? Thank you very much.
Thank you, my brother. I think, the Excellency, there was a lady who wanted to ask a question. Kev, and there's a lady again, because we want to make sure that our sisters are also not pushed aside.
Dumelang.
Dumelang.
My name is Francina Baitse. I work for the Voice newspaper. My question is related to discriminatory laws, but in particular about children born. In Botswana, I stand to be corrected, when a child's father is not a Motswana, but a mother is a Motswana, you don't qualify to be a president of the country. But when your mother is from outside, but your father is a Motswana, then you qualify. So my question is, why these discriminatory laws, and do you think it's high time that you change these laws, as now we are brothers and sisters, regardless of where you come from?
Thank you. Kev, the last question will be from MOKGWEETSI.
Thank you. This question is directed to both His Excellency President Dr. MOKGWEETSI MASISI and President Emmerson MNANGAGWA. It's about the issue of migration. It seems to be a very contested issue. Probably I would say in Africa, I'm sure it is a contested issue globally. When we see what we are trying to do as a continent and probably regionally, you see contestation. In some areas, there will be an acceptance of probably the use of IDs. For example, with the case in point, there was a smooth transition into allowing this transaction to happen between Botswana and Namibia. We are seeing probably a little bit of a slow pace in implementing it between Botswana and Zimbabwe. I want to refer to Your Excellencies and talk to you about the issue of migration and its contestation on the continent. What is the big elephant in the room? Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellencies.
Emang was the first one to ask on this round about what Zimbabwe has done right, the right which Botswana has not been able to do in the agri sector, I guess. One of the things that Zimbabwe has done right, that I'm certain of, was to be more privileged by God with the rainfall, the fertility of the land, ecology. And therefore, when you lace policy over that and a budget in the agricultural sector, of course, policy and a budget put together by my brother, you get a resounding result. Surplus in wheat production, surplus in maize, and the graph just keeps going up. When you move a little further to the south, where about 2/3 of our land is covered in the desert, Kalahari sands, and the rainfall is significantly less, we don't become as successful despite the lacing of the land with the policy and the budget by this brother and others before him. So in summary, really, that's one of the reasons. Of course, if we dig deeper into it, we'll find other nuances. The productivity and the skill level of the people and the attitude towards farming or agriculture and availability of resources. If you recall, in Zimbabwe, after they were quote-unquote granted independence, they didn't have land on which to farm. And they took decisions that they did to acquire that land, which got them into trouble with some. But they got it, and now they're producing. And that's policy, that's a budget, that's resolve. In Botswana, we didn't suffer as much with respect to disposition of land. I said as much because we have things similar to them. And the very agreements that were precedent to our independence, in this very same notorious house in London, Lancaster House, we had the same. Our condition to independence was that we would A, agree to convert all lands occupied by white people to freehold by the stroke of a pen. Otherwise, you don't get your independence. And we did that. We didn't suffer as much as Zimbabweans because not a lot of our land was occupied by those, and we were not as heavily populated. But yes, you know as well as I do that we suffer more frequent droughts than Zimbabwe does. In fact, we've gotten to a point where we accepted that drought is a natural feature of our systems. I don't want to belabor it. My brother will also perhaps have opportunity now to detail the very impressive programs and the interventions that he has in the word spring in Shona. What's it? Fumbuza. A program. I will let my brother ask the other question about the press review of the laws and whether we advise one another in the private or not. And then there was a question by Mutle, Latile Mutle. Are we not worried about the influx of Zimbabweans when we use the ID? There's a break in logic here. The ID itself, the ownership of, and the permissioning of it becoming a travel document does not positively correlate with influxing, because there's still a filter. What it does is it provides a greater opportunity for more to travel legally. There's still a border that they have to cross. It doesn't mean they use the ID to skip a border. They still become illegal even if they have an ID. You're still an illegal immigrant even if you have a passport valid that was not stamped at the border. So we must separate these. So the permissioning, the agreement to use the ID does not equal to influx. And I think people get caught up in this emotional association, not logical, and certainly not necessarily true. You know, I want to link this to the question asked about migration in Africa and why it seems there's an appetite for migration when some countries are involved and not when others are. And this is where xenophobia begins. When you, my brothers and sisters, develop an attitude, usually without real explanation, you like these ones and you don't like these ones. You decide you want these ones, but you don't want these ones. You break relations down. It's curious how, if it is true, this turn of attitude, because I would hazard to think this may be a caricatured view. Not so long ago, when Zimbabwe was fighting for liberation, we readily accepted, opened our doors to refugees. Now they're not coming as refugees. They're people from a free country. Sometimes, because you've had a bad experience with somebody who happens to be a Zimbabwean, you then make an unfair generalization. And you say, no, Zimbabweans, I don't want. Namibians, because they haven't interacted with you in a way that you don't like, we want Namibians. But you know what, human beings, in all societies, there are good people, honest people, there are dishonest people, and bad people, even among your own Botswana. I mean, if you look at the crimes that we suffer from the most, who commits most of those? Even gender-based crimes. So I want to converse with you, my citizens, and make you realize that this use of the ID to cross is not inviting trouble, it's inviting goodness, much more so than anything that might bother you. And then you enforce the laws to keep everybody, irrespective of nationality, from doing bad. And if they do, you take action. So let's be logical when we talk about those and not let the emotions of recent experiences and perhaps xenophobic inclinations take us over. And you know what has happened when you take it to its ultimate end, where people get beaten and sometimes killed. It doesn't define us as a people. Don't let it settle among us as a value. Botswana are not known for that. This country is not that. The president here just said, we are a peaceful nation of Africa. That's an attribute we want to keep. And so I urge you, as members of the Fourth Estate, to force a discussion on this and make sure we are informed by the principle of it. Otherwise, I'll have to ask you, when SADC declared its determination to integrate, when AU declared that, where were you? Why didn't you raise this and single out Zimbabweans? We don't want Zimbabweans. And say why. But you know, when you cross the border and you eat the Zimbabwean mangoes and you dance to their music, you don't remember that you don't want them, for those who don't. We must be honest. The question from the lady from Yarona, sorry I didn't quite get your name, FM, on collaboration in the space economy. This is a new one. So we don't have a history of collaboration that we are going to do it. You'll catch us in the sky. Boniface from Okavango Express, was it? Okay, Okavango Express. About the protracted negotiations with De Beers, and you are saying that in the past there were deleterious consequences to the economies of leaders who were firm on multinationals. And you asked, how did I feel? Was it a David and Goliath affair? And how can this be taken to scale to Africa? First, let me say this. I never at any one moment thought it was a David and Goliath affair. If at all, there may have been a suggestion that it could have been a David and Goliath affair. I felt to be on the upper hand, and I took the attitude that I am on top. Whether on top here is the David or the Goliath, but the good top. I was on top. For the simple reason, and this is my advice to anybody who leads a country with people and resources. If the resource is yours, you must adopt the attitude that you are on top. That's the basis. So I didn't care what money they had, didn't care what technology they had. The resources in the ground, when you draw a line and you begin, it's ours. You are the visitor. Every visitor should knock. It's just polite. And knocking in the abstraction of mineral wealth begets permissioning. And that permissioning has a fee. All right, take it a little further back. Before you even seek permission, you explore. That requires permissioning by the permission giver, who's the one on top. Even if they're poor. I felt good. You ask how I felt? I felt good. I felt empowered. Empowered by the knowledge I had gathered over time. The analysis I'd gotten into, because I looked through all the agreements and the master agreement. Lonely, yes. I also had to assemble a team of right-minded, well-inclined, patriotic citizens. Because we are citizens and they are citizens. There are others who have the ID, but you know. Because what had happened in the past, many of our powerful investor institutions or organizations had planted in our minds a belief that they have the upper hand because they have capital, they have technology, they have knowledge, right? And they have route to market, they have capacity to value add. And we, nothing. And in the exploitation of the market, they have oriented it to make sure the market is external to this geographic location. And all the regulatory mechanisms are controlled offshore. And so they developed, in the case of De Beers with Botswana, they had developed a nasty agreement, terrible agreement. I wish it not for the worst of my enemies, although I have no enemies, because it made us settle on a legally binding acceptance of operating only at the primary level. Almost Stone Age, dig, collect, sell. When you look at the value chain of diamonds. I'll give you an example of global scale of business. The value global of diamonds that are rough, unprocessed, is equivalent to $15 billion annually. And Botswana is arguably the biggest player globally. Second biggest by volume, but certainly the biggest by value. We're number one. So how could I go into a discussion and not feel on top when we're number one? The value globally of that 15 billion, once value added, transforms from 15 billion to 100 billion. And yet the agreement we had obliges us to only play at the level up to a maximum, if we include other countries' production, 15 billion. And Botswana, despite being number one in value, global production, and number two in volume production, we're only yielding half of that 15 billion. It's illogical. So the second, after saying that the things were ours, was that this one must go. It must go. The third was then to say we are going to participate the whole pipeline, by hook or by crook. The fourth was to have them acknowledge that there has been sinning in the past, and we put a fee to it. Of course, we gave it a nice name. You didn't call it sin. We called it a Diamond Development Fund. 10 billion. The fifth was that, yes, we are a partnership. In the joint partnership for abstraction in the form of BOTSWANA, we, the Botswana government, were accepting 10% of production to discover price. But we were trying to discover price when we were still locked into an agreement that said we could not participate in the value chain, which was illogical. So it was one agreement that was negated by another clause. We had to take that out. And then yet, the other was that we were going to increase our allocation to the Botswana government of that which the joint venture was mining, so that it allowed us to be a real player. I will end by saying I had to remind them, because I'd done my homework very well, that Botswana production of diamonds made up 70% of the net value of De Beers. That's leverage. In business terms, if you own 70%, I'm not saying you own 70%, if you own 70% of a company, you are in control. So I pose a question. Who really owns De Beers? So when you drill back, I mean, I'm a nice guy, I'm a peaceful guy. I didn't want to go back and fight about this 15% that we own and De Beers that we paid for, an exorbitant amount. But in real terms, if we, from production from Botswana, can cause De Beers, given its total value, to attribute 70% of its net wealth from Botswana, and yet we only own 15%, that's not growing. It doesn't make sense. So you set up your negotiation in such a manner that you call the shot in the end. Checkmate. Take one wrong move, you're dead. I felt good. I checkmated them. But the checkmating doesn't stop. And the tango doesn't end. Because we are not as developed with our technology. We don't have control of the markets. They're in a different jurisdiction. So we see other maneuvers to try and, in my view, to try and undermine what we are doing. I will not rest. And I urge other nation states, as I do now urge for support in quest of doing this, that even with this discussion we're having with the G7, where suddenly there's association between an attempt to mitigate revenues that Russia supposedly gets from diamonds in its capacity to wage war against Ukraine, and it's drilled down to riveting the rough node to exclusivity located in a non-producing country, Belgium, Antwerp, and technology is used as an excuse. I reject that notion with contempt. Because what we expose ourselves to of the complete control of ability of us to market our diamonds to another jurisdiction. Yet we are certain in Botswana where our diamonds are from, and there's no contamination. No Russian diamond enters our market. And we have diplomatic relations with all these G7 guys. We like each other. We make pronouncements. We have, places where we proclaim our admiration for each other's values. If they trust us and we trust them, we will continue to determine the integrity of our diamonds. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Your Excellency.
Ntsha dikarabo tsa gagwe mo potsong tsa babegadikgang mme mo nako ya gompieno go tla tsena tautona Dr. Emmerson Mnangagwa wa lehatshe la Zimbabwe.
He has covered most of the questions that have been asked, but I will attend to a few. What has Zimbabwe done right to attain agricultural surplus? First, Zimbabwe, is an agricultural country. It has a vast agricultural land, and generally we have good rains in Zimbabwe. And we have developed a model of agriculture at 2 levels. The first level is that we must have food security at the household level. How do we achieve that at the household level? A year has 52 weeks. So each household is required to dig 52 holes going straight. 1, 2, 3, 52, which is 52 weeks. In the 19 holes this way, that feeds a family of 7 minimum. Husband, wife, and 5 children. They will be fed by these 19 holes per week. And the 52 holes will feed the family for a year. Simple. There is no mechanization about what I'm talking about now. This guarantees food at the household level. It doesn't matter whether in Botswana or in Iceland, the year is 52 weeks for both. So you dig your 52 holes, not by a tractor or any mechanization, by yourself. You dig. Dig, 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 52 holes, 52 weeks. Dig, dig, 19 holes, 1 week food for the family. So that guarantees food at the household level without mechanization. Those who have farms must now produce for the nation. for you who live in town. But we've already taken care of all the villages or villagers by just digging 52 holes in the 19 holes. The 19 is for 1 week, 52 holes for the year. Full stop. Then those who have farms have now got to produce for the nation. They don't produce for the family. They produce for the nation. However, in Zimbabwe, we support both. These families, households, we give them free inputs. Because if we don't do so, we may find ourselves looking for food to feed them. But because we've given them inputs and are guaranteed to have the 19 holes going this way is food supply for a family of 7. That is eating 3 times a day. The 52 is for the year. But the bigger farmer who does not produce for himself but for the country is served differently, is supported differently. So I think that's the basic concept of how we have attained agricultural surplus. We make sure the ordinary household has a model of agriculture that gives security at that level. The farmer does not address food security for himself or for herself, addresses food security for the nation. I think that answers your question. So this is why we have food surplus in Zimbabwe. Then the next question was, what form is cooperation space between Zimbabwe and the Botswana take? Currently, in the space agency, we can cooperate, but Zimbabwe is in partnership with Japan. So we are in the space science, but with Japan. But you are saying, no, why go to Japan, not Botswana? Both of us have no space technology. Now that we are involved in space technology with Japan, we can cooperate and bring Botswana on board. But we are already there. The other question now was for my dear brother. Botswana challenge to DBS. This one, he has answered. This question of paternity laws and LGBT presidency, I don't know about that one. It's a local question here. I see. I don't know about that one. I'm sure you do. Across the border, we don't have it. Then contestations of migration documentation possesses. Now, there are 2 separate issues here. Leaders have a vision. If a country has no vision, it has no future. Vision must be ahead of implementation. So what we pronounce, me and my brother, is the vision, what you want to achieve. The countries in terms of legislation may be way, way behind. But you must be proud that the leaders have a vision of where we want to go. So there may be difference between the vision and the practicality, what is actual on the ground. But you must admire that you have a vision. Botswana challenge DBS, that is local. I think I have answered those questions which relate to me. We have no problem about paternity laws of eligibility to presidents. I have a Minister of Justice. Do you have anything of that sort?
Your Excellency, we allow our citizens by birth and descent to hold the office of the president.
That's my Minister of Justice. I can't dispute that.
We do not differentiate. If you are a citizen by birth, and your mother is not, if you are a citizen by birth and your mother is actually the Zimbabwean but the father is not, for as long as you are classified as a Zimbabwean
citizen,
by birth, you are a citizen, you qualify.
So those among you who want to become president in Zimbabwe, just become a citizen. Just become a citizen. It comes free. I think this covers the section where I must give.
Your Excellency, I think there was a, you may answer it
Yes.
very briefly. There was, I think, a question about press or something like that. What was
insult laws?
Oh, insult laws, Your Excellency.
What are they? In Zimbabwe? We have insult laws. My Minister of Justice, when did you make those laws without me knowing? I have my Minister of Justice. What insult laws do we have? I don't know about them.
Insulting the president, the journalist.
Ah, I see.
Yes.
No, it's more in the press than in actuality. I'm not aware of any law which says the president. What we have is laws of defamation. Now, when you people in the media, when a person defames the president, you say the insult laws. There is no insult law we have. This is just the media which does all those things. I can assure you, we have no laws which are called insult laws. Just think of it, we're sitting down to craft laws about insults. We are absolutely mature.
Thank you very much, Your Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
I beg your pardon. I had answered the one on paternity and the presidency. What we have in Botswana has been discrimination in even the acquisition of citizenship, and there have been challenges successful. And what we're left with is to regularize by way of complying. And in the regularization, when we consulted the public, when we did the constitutional review, they were very, very clear that they wanted to make exceptions to holding significant offices, such as the presidency, not so much on the basis of citizenship of this country, but it was more to do with a dual citizenship. And so what they want to do, and this will obviously, if it goes through Parliament, as the people have said they want, i.e. to deny those who hold dual citizenship from holding certain offices. If there is an appetite to challenge it in the High Court to determine its constitutionality, that can be so. But in terms of complying to make sure we eliminate discrimination on the basis of paternity, that we have passed, we are only regularizing now. It used to be there, I concede. It's a ministry that is doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I think, yes, His Excellency wants. I just wanted to remind you, Your Excellency.
I have stood up to support my brother. In Zimbabwe, we have banned the exportation of raw minerals, raw wealth. We have developed a roadmap where we must beneficiate all our minerals in Zimbabwe to an extent where we get maximum value of our minerals. we think it's critically important. When we don't have the technology to do so, we devise a method of acquisition of the technology to beneficiate our minerals so that we get maximum value. We believe that many African countries, Zimbabwe included, have been exporting raw minerals, which when beneficiated by those who buy from us, get much more value than they will have paid to us. We have now since said no. If we have no technology to beneficiate the minerals which we have, they are safe where they are, underground, until we have the technology to make them more beneficial to our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, thank you so much for indulging us, the media. It's,
tsenya kwa bokhutlong jwa phuthego ye ya bobegakgang mme gakologela gore phuthego ye ya botautona wa lehatshe la Zimbabwe le tautona wa lehatshe la rona la Botswana Dr. MOKGWEETSI Masisi e ne e tshwaretswe mo Maung mme segolobogolo ne e le gore ne e le phuthego e ne e leng gore tautona Dr. MOKGWEETSI Masisi o ne a amogetse molekane a gagwe go tswa kwa lefatsheng la Zimbabwe Dr. MNANGAGWA go tsenela phuthego ya lekgotla la ditirisanyo la Zimbabwe le Botswana.
And that wraps up the brotherhood conversations that were taking place there in Maung between the president of Zimbabwe, MNANGAGWA, and the president of the Republic of Botswana, Dr. MOKGWEETSI Masisi. And I think a lot has been picked up in there in terms of the relations, with a bit of highlights that came out with regards to the integration of Southern Africa. And I think the most important thing there being the proposed railway line between Botswana, Zimbabwe and Mozambique, and as well as that proposition to have Zimbabweans and Botswana cross between the two countries with IDs. And I hope that out of that a lot more will be picked up. And again, obviously, there's a bit of a land conversation, I wouldn't call it a dispute, between Botswana and Zimbabwe that is being clarified. And I think a lot more we will learn from there as time goes on, that being the conversation that came out of the Binational Commission in Maung.
The L'Oreal Foundation is awarding and celebrating women in science for the last 25 years. The reason for it, women scientists were made invisible for as long as science exists. Their discoveries and contributions were hindered, silenced, even stolen. And to change this, it's not just about an issue of equality or more equal societies. It is about better science for all.
I do research that is mostly focused on food safety measures. The aim is to develop adsorbents or materials that can be able to remove toxins from food, preferably maize and sorghum right now, because these are the staple food sources in our country and also in Africa, but they are very much susceptible to fungal infestation and mycotoxin contamination. So my study focuses on finding sustainable measures to remove these toxins. This award recognizes and awards young talents in Africa for their scientific work, and it is an award that is going to help me take my research forward, because it is funding which is going to support my research. This is the money that I'm going to be using to buy reagents, be able to access some instruments from outside, be able to pay for them and advance my research, because right now we have a problem with funding. I am currently self-sponsored, and so you can imagine how difficult it is to support my tuition fees and also to buy some stuff needed for my project. And with this money then I can be able to fill up the gaps I'm going to be able to fill up the gaps and be able to complete my studies. Being a girl, you are faced with a lot of challenges. Yeah, a lot of social obligations are there, and I just want to say to the young girls out there, don't be afraid to get into science because there is support out there.